Welcome everybody. This is Lessons from the Field. This is where we interview a distinguished alum or friend of a partner of the College of Pharmacy and pick their brains about their career and advice that they have for students, recent graduates, and alumni. And today we're really honored to have Jim Langman with us today. Jim is a graduate of our college from 1982. He held a number of positions in managed care pharmacy and with some of the pharmacy chains with Walgreens, and finished up as vice president for health and wellness at Walmart. And Jim now owns a winery, and I hope at the end of this we could talk a little bit about the fine wines and put a plug in for his winery. But so Jim, let's go ahead and get started. I'm looking forward to this. If you could just start us off with a real brief run through on your career, some of the highlights of that.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you. I'm honored to be selected to do this, and it's obviously a typo somewhere because I can't believe it says 1982 on there, but that's not a typo, believe it or not. Yeah, so I'm Jim Langman, and I'm a pharmacist. Besides trying to be a good person, love of God, country, and family. That's someone wants me to describe myself. I say I'm a pharmacist, and very proud to do that. Quick history: started working in the local pharmacy in actually Cicero, there in the western suburbs of Chicago, when I was 10 years old. And just a stock boy, 25 cents an hour. It's a long time ago, 40 hours a week. And I never stopped working since then. So it's been more than a half a century. And great part in that pharmacy, you learned a lot of things about life, about people, about the profession. And all 8 of us Langman siblings worked there at one time or another. It was a great education. Some of those early lessons, from Mr. and Mrs. O, the owners, taught us empathy, and Mr. O was way ahead on business things as well as what's happening today in our profession. He was doing just-in-time inventory. He was only hired great people, so you have a great team of people, and then that makes your job easier. He was great at customer service. He was managing diabetics back then when insulin was the only thing we really had. He was doing weight loss. He was doing smoking cessation. So it was a pretty impressive thing he was doing back then. But I think that the part that really strikes me that we've circled back 50 years later, it's a poor neighborhood, not a lot of access to healthcare. And what was interesting, he was the first line of defense. There was 2 pharmacies and 2 doctors and about a 2 square mile, maybe 3 square mile area. And so he was triaging people into the healthcare system before that actually became part of the practice. He would come, he was Doc, he was Mr. O, and he would tell him, yeah, it's time to go see Dr. Casalis, or it's time to go to the ER, or it's time to get a new prescription for a different blood pressure medication. So it was amazing that now, 50 years later, we embrace that, and that's the normal way of doing things. Is we work as a community of healthcare professionals. So that was great learnings for him, among many other things. Worked there all the way through to my 3rd year. I was junior in pharmacy school. Started at Walgreens as a pharmacy technician. Went to store management, pharmacy management operations. Ended up being their vice president of clinical services. Again, had great opportunities to find great people and hire great teams. And so this has been about 2001. And 20 years ago, it was uncommon for pharmacists to do a lot of the things that we're doing today, like immunizations and compounding and infertility, HIV counseling, managing diabetics, and so forth. That's what we built. Didn't know any better. They were looking for someone who literally the job assignment was, Jim, we know that the profession's changing, and your job is to understand where we need to go. And that was literally what it was. So I got the opportunity to try and figure out what the future could be, should be, and how to get there for, at the time, the largest pharmacy chain in the country, actually, and in the world at the time. So a lot of things that are common today, it wasn't me. I'm only smart enough to know that I'm not smart enough to know everything, but I'm smart enough to know that I need really great people. So that's what we did to get all those programs going nationwide. And that's it. So got a lot done in 40 years.
But thanks, Jim. That's a great overview, impressive career, and thanks for sharing that with us. You mentioned, I think, where you started at the pharmacy in Cicero. I was going to ask you, how and when you decided you wanted to become a pharmacist, but I'm guessing maybe it was from the what you learned there and how you saw that pharmacists interact with patients and so forth, but maybe you could elaborate on it.
Sure, that was a big part of it. And my oldest sister was in pharmacy school at the time also.
Oh, okay.
And yes, we come from, so she led it and put that in our heads that got to get through school. That's the way we improve ourselves and make something of ourselves. And she was right. My parents were right. The nuns at St. Anthony were right too. And but working there, the great part about it, I got a great education on business, on life, but on personal health care also. You know, a young kid like that in a neighborhood, a pretty tough neighborhood, I could see the benefits of working hard. I could see the benefits of treating people the right way, but I could also see the effects of bad life choices also. You know, as 10 years old, you're looking at someone who's in their mid 20s, you're like, whoa, they're getting old. And then in their 30s, you're like, wow, that's pretty old. And 40s, they're ancient, right? But I could also see the good and bad parts about good life choices and bad life choices. You know, smoking, taking recreational drugs or other substances, not taking care of your health. And even as a young child, I wouldn't see someone from the time they're in their teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, and maybe in the 50s. But what I could see is people in those different age groups, and they were coming to the pharmacy for in general, the older they got, for even more critical illnesses. And as a young child, I remember just thinking, you know, I don't want to end up like that one day. I'm not going to start smoking. I'm not going to start drinking. I want to exercise. I don't want to get that diabetes thing because that's bad. And you know, so it was a great way to learn about personal health also, and get a look into the future in real time in that pharmacy.
Yeah, it's great to see. I mean, you obviously come from a family of pharmacists, your sister, and Noah, we talked earlier, you mentioned a few others that had either gone to UIC or other pharmacy schools. So that's awesome. Kind of along the same lines then, and you've already, I think if people who are listening closely picked up on a few really good tidbits of advice, but is there advice or anything else you'd like to kind of pass on along to the pharmacists of today or pharmacy students of today, those that are just training now and are going to hopefully follow in your footsteps in the years to come?
So, run ahead of me, and I'll follow in your footsteps. That's my first thing for all your students. You know, over the years, if you're really honest with yourself and you pay attention to the world around you, you can really learn a lot. You know, so big things for pharmacy school. And I just thought of this the other day, and I hadn't thought of it for a while, because it just became part of that foundation of the way I live and do business and do healthcare. So I worked at Walgreens in Melrose Park, and the two pharmacists there, their name was Tom and Jerry, believe it or not. Jerry Mintz, I won't say Tom's last name because he's still with us. But I was working, had taken the boards, and I forgot to study to brush up on calculations. But you know what, Dr. Siegel, I remember he said, if you're forgetting all the other stuff, just remember these three things. There's 2.54 centimeters per inch. There's 1.06 quarts per liter, and there's 454 grams in a pound. And that's what I was doing on the boards. Full panic. I thought I didn't pass the boards. And so I was in the pharmacy, and Tom and Jerry are there, and another technician. And it was a really busy pharmacy. And this is in 1982. And computers really didn't exist. So we were pricing things by hand. The UPC codes on things that you buy on the shelf were just being rolled out into the marketplace. That's how old I am. So I got a phone call. Hey, Jim, it's for you to pick up the phone. And it was my older sister, Joyce, who's a pharmacist. And she goes, hey, thought you said you're going to fail the boards. I go, I'm sure I did. I think I blew calculations. She goes, no, your license just came. I go, no, it didn't. No, it didn't. So I thought they were just setting me up. We were always picking at each other. And I said, wait, no, I don't believe you guys. My brother got on it and believe him. So I said, put Dad on the phone, because my dad, most honest man I ever met in my whole life. And I go, Dad, did I pass the boards? He goes, your sister just told you passed the boards. And I went, okay, I really passed the boards. I go, holy cow. He goes, yeah, good job. Bye. And hang up. So I turn around, I look at the pharmacist. I go, Tom, Jerry, I passed the boards. I'm a pharmacist. And they look at each other and they went, okay, we're going to lunch. So in that moment, just like that, I went from holy cow, I'm a pharmacist, to holy cow, I'm a pharmacist. You know, you have your whole career when you're a technician, a pharmacy student, graduate student, you have the pharmacist, that's your last line of defense, checking to make sure that everything's done right and they catch the mistakes. I got to tell you that the amount of the enormity of the responsibility at that moment just hit me like, holy smokes, you guys can't go to lunch. So they went to lunch for about an hour and 45 minutes,
Wow.
literally like that. So I think that really cemented something. I knew that, you know, intuitively, and you know that just from having logic, but man, talk about emotionally and right to the core, like, you are now responsible. So when you get out of pharmacy school, you're really you've accomplished getting your pharmacy degree and pass your board, you get a pharmacist license, and maybe you run to other advanced things. But once you're going to be a practicing pharmacist, doesn't matter what profession, where you're going to do it, how you're going to use your license, you don't have power, you have responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably a very healthy way of looking at the world, because the responsibility is you're there to take care of patients, do no harm. You're there to interact with the rest of the healthcare profession, to manage protocols for that patient. Be humble in what you're doing. You don't know it all, because I tell you, once you think you know it all, you've just proven that you don't know it all. You'll never know everything. And then when you think you've succeeded, I've succeeded. I've got my license. I'm all done. I'm at the top of the profession. Nothing else to do. Nope. You've just started. Because once you think you've succeeded and you can't get any better, everything's perfect, that's when you're going to start to fail. That's true for yourself. That's true for the way you're doing your profession. That's true if you're going to run a business, if you're going to own a business, wherever you're going to work. If you think you've succeeded, that's immediately when you're going to fail. So that was probably the biggest thing becoming a pharmacist was that instant understanding of the enormity of the responsibility given to you. You know, I do say the great part about this, though, is if you have that understanding of the world around you, you have to understand that even if you're not in management, you're going to be a staff pharmacist, doesn't matter. That license gives you responsibility. So if technicians are working with you, you're responsible for those technicians. Your license depends on it. Your profession depends on it. Your patient's health depends on it. Those technicians depend on that. And so a couple of things that I remember over the years going, man, I wish somebody had told me this a long time ago. I had to figure out most of this by really making lots and lots of mistakes and then trying to figure it out. And once in a while, I had some good knowledge that you latch onto. So in business, in the pharmacy profession, you know, one of the biggest challenges I see, and clinicians, what they do, they teach us how to take care of patients. They don't teach us how to really take care of business, how to be, how to function in large organizations or really competitive organizations outside of school. And, in life, but also in your profession, in business, when you're working, whatever you're going to do, when you're teaching, there's a couple of things. First, be ready, because there's going to be moments in your personal life, your professional life, business life, where you're going to have to say no to something. The illegal stuff and the really immoral stuff, that's easy. Most people, that's not going to happen very often, right? Yeah, no way, sorry, it's illegal. It's going to be things that are, this is just unethical. It's not right. And we shouldn't do it. Be ready for that, because that's the difference between being a manager that starts taking you to being a leader. But on the flip side of that, probably one of the biggest sources of conflict I've seen at all levels. It's amazing how all levels, all ages, doesn't matter the background, the demographic makeup of the person, is that when the higher up you're going to go in an organization, doesn't matter what type it is, the average capacity of that group, the will and skill of those groups tends to get higher. So you think about in the regular world, to get through pharmacy school, you got to have some smarts to do that, right? And so you've got capacity and you have the will and skill to get through there. But in life, if you remember that you don't have all the answers, there's going to be moments where you're not going to agree with something. But the question you should ask yourself, your agreement is that because it's wrong? Or is it because that I prefer to do it this way? I don't want to do it that way. In those moments, you have to be really honest with yourself, and you have to be comfortable with someone else's version of success. And you should feel free to constructively and professionally input your thoughts into the situation. But if it's not fatally flawed, then okay, if that person is your boss or even at home. I like prefer some things one way and wife does things another way. And I just say, yes, dear, it's my fault. Anyway, but no, I'm just kidding. But you think about that. If it's fatally flawed, you have an obligation to raise your hand. If it's not, ask yourself, am I just being uncomfortable with someone else's version of success? Because there's different ways of getting something done. And if you just preferred a different way, is that really the time for you to put your foot down and say, no, I want to do it. I want to do it this. I want to paint with my right hand today and not paint with my left hand today like you want me to. So that's probably one of the biggest sources of when I have people who have challenges getting along with other people on the teams. That's one of the discussions we have that really helps them. The other side of that, and again, as a pharmacist, you're going to be dealing with all types of people. You're responsible in life. You're responsible. Another thing it's awkward for people. It's uncomfortable for people to give feedback because you want to hurt anybody's feeling. And some people let it all build up and all at once, and boom, it all comes gushing out, and then that's a problem. So I think that one of the other big techniques that I figured out over the years, and another thing that really helps teams get along with each other, and this is as a pharmacist to their technicians, a pharmacist to another clinician, manager to someone on the team, someone on the team to the manager. It's uncomfortable for both people for both sides of the conversation, the person giving that feedback and the person receiving the feedback. So two things that you want to do is first is just say, may I give you feedback? And then what happens with that is first, you're asking that person for that you're asking that person to accept feedback from you. And 99 out of 100 times, the person's going to go, sure. Okay. If they're nice people. Now, once in a while, that there's always a zircon in the diamond field. So, the person who just wants to always have a fight, the one who hasn't matured, who hasn't seen this video, who still wants to argue with it, they'll say, yeah, please. You say, thank you. And you just do it constructively and don't make it criticism. Don't make it personal. So what that's done is the person's give you permission. It's lowered your anxiety level. The person's more open to it because you've been polite, professional, asking them to allow you to give them that feedback. And then you have to be, that's reciprocal too, so remember that. So those are probably the biggest conflicts I see forever. It's been going on for 50 years I've been in business, but I think those are probably, I've distilled that down to those two thoughts to really help you out of those tough situations.
Wow, there's a lot there. Thank you,
Sorry.
Jim. No, I mean, that's all really, really good. And obviously you have so much experience over your career to I guess reflect on and provide back to our students. So I really appreciate that. Just so that we don't run out of time, maybe I'll abbreviate the next couple of questions. Again, you've seen a lot in healthcare, and maybe you can just briefly just reflect on things in healthcare that maybe we should work on improving over time, and also where the pharmacist can really impact healthcare and patients and have the biggest impact that our students might want to think about as they move forward with their careers.
So I have the two big things I've seen. So at Walgreens and at Walmart, I was really dealing with population health, construction protocols. So I got to see things on large scales, national scales, and then with international responsibilities, got to see healthcare in 14 other countries. So some of the things I'm going to say, some people they should not take offense to it. They can give me feedback. If they ever meet me, they're open to give feedback. First, I've seen the healthcare, the access to healthcare we have in the United States is unparalleled anywhere in the planet. Let me qualify that. A small island nation of 1 million people might have a better healthcare system because it's a little small island nation, right? But for any type of major country on the planet, access to healthcare, we do have the best. Now, what should we change? A couple things. I think the biggest factor for healthcare costs that are high, two things is that pharmacy claims are the only standardized claims in healthcare. The data layouts for medical claims, there's 1,000 different data layouts. So you have different medical systems that don't talk to each other. And if you're all in one system, like the Mercy system down here, or I think might be Northwest, or I can't remember which the big hospital system now again is Chicago. They can talk to each other. But once you leave that system, you're the patient's in charge of that data. So that's a challenge. And so you think about it, trying to manage patients, who get prescriptions at a Walgreens pharmacy and a Walmart pharmacy
Mhm.
and Glenn's pharmacy is a challenge. So can we standardize medical claims, the data layouts, so that's visible to each other? What I think is wrong is what we've learned with pharmacy claims, where that one view of all the claims has allowed PBMs to come in and use that data in nefarious ways. And not the primary focus is supposed to be take care of patients. And that's kind of switched more toward finance a lot of the time, but I think we're going to work through that. Healthcare claims, we could share them all on data layouts, but the same data layout, but have that in a blockchain type of atmosphere where it all exists in one form, but that data is only accessible to the place that the patient gives someone the permission to see that data. And then it goes right back and disappears, because if you have it all in one big pot, if all men were angels, we'd have no laws, so I think just all that data in one spot's not great if it's openly accessible to everyone. And then the second part of it, so what that does is leads to defensive medicine, and we have a tremendous amount of redundant testing, just because we want to be safe. Two things: we want to make sure we take care of the patient, which is good. We should be doing that. The other thing is we don't want to end up with a court case against us. So can we do a smart type of tort reform where it's not just nuisance suits? And people, half the country will be mad at me for saying that. But when you're looking at large entities, doesn't matter, governmental, NGOs, and for-profit companies, there's a tremendous amount of nuisance lawsuits that are produced in places that have no guidelines on doing appropriate lawsuits. So a little controversial, but I got to tell you, from that thing, we'd lower the amount of defensive medicine, and defensive medicine really increases our expenses here by about 22% across the board. That's, on the trillions of dollars we spend on healthcare, that's a lot of money, and think of all the good we could do with that.
So how about last question before I want to ask you a little bit about your winery.
Sure.
Where do you see for our students who are graduating now or in school now, they're kind of trying to predict the future, and where are the best opportunities for them, what kind of experiences they need to get now, and be competitive and so forth. What do you see as the big opportunities going forward in pharmacy that students can kind of think about ahead of time?
Sure. Yeah, what a different world. 40 years ago when I was in school, the amount of medications available was minimal. It's a different world today. And what's happening today is what we've really been talking about for 40 years. The industry, the healthcare industry in general, there's only a couple of types of clinicians where there's plenty of them in the country. There's a shortage of just about every other clinician in the country. So as the population ages, as the demographic mix changes in the country to older populations, more ethnic backgrounds that have higher incidence of diabetes and other afflictions, the need for healthcare is not going to get smaller in our country. So us working as a community of clinicians is a mandate. That's the part that we should be very aware of and embrace that. The other part is, the good part is that we are now, people spend less time in the hospital. We have less time, having IVs infused into us. Treatments are really getting to the point where they're going to be more IM and oral treatments for even many of the types of cancers that we have now. Just use that for an example. Pharmacists and all clinicians are really expected to work to the top of their license, and that top of that license actually keeps going up for most professions. Think of it just like we talked about, we weren't doing vaccinations as pharmacists 20 years ago, and now we're managing specialty care in your pharmacy, or just ambulatory patients coming in and out of your pharmacy with oral medications versus the patient having to spend time in the hospital. I think it's a good microcosm of what's happening in the country for pharmacists, but the whole healthcare profession, and it's really exciting. And the great paradigm shift that's happened in these last 40 years is the schools, all types of healthcare professions, all the academic professions through colleges are teaching that. And so the clinicians today are much more collegial. They're much more receptive to a group type of practice that wasn't that way 40 years ago. We've matured as a healthcare profession. We've gotten much more sophisticated. Communication is much better. So it really is what we've been talking about for 40 years. It's exciting. But you think back when I was a pharmacist 38 years ago, when I got that license, the amount of medications I had to worry about, was like this. Today, the amount of medications, along with everything else you have to know to be a pharmacist, to work at the top of your license, is probably 10 times that. So again, you have more opportunity, but that means you have more responsibility. But you can also really make a difference in patients' lives.
That's true. So true. Thank you. We can't leave this without hearing a little bit about your winery and your vineyard. It's like something I'm sure people are interested in. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing now.
It's absolutely from a little kid, from a little 10-year-old stock boy in Cicero to a winery in California. Never, I stay humble. I look at my, I go, wait a minute, this is Jim Wine. So all my classmates from 1982, yeah, it's the same guy who was in school with you doing this. I can't believe it either. Went to Napa the first time, understood that Napa and Sonoma, if you're a working man or woman, you're not gonna be able to afford something like that. But we found a wonderful area in the Sierra foothills, all family run wineries. Great part about where we're at is the people. We bought 21 acres, 17 acres of vines. Everything we do in the winery and the vineyard is exactly the same as Napa Valley, but we're about 85 miles east of Napa in the Sierra foothills in an area called the Fairplay Wine Loop. There's about 16 wineries on an 8-mile road, all family run. So our winemaker, Marco Capelli, one of the three, he 12 years running Swanson and Napa, 8 years in France and Italy, 30 years out by us, hundreds of 90-point wines. Our vineyard manager, their largest client's Ron Bauer, and we're their smallest client with our 17 acres. So again, just like everything else, I add nothing to that value equation, except I know that I really got to find great people. So we're the winery of affordable luxury. It's langmanwinery.com. And we didn't talk about this ahead of time, but for clinicians, if you go onto the website on the front page, bottom left, it says industry and veteran request. If you click on that, there's a tab that says what industry, pick healthcare, put your email address in, and just type in, it says, what's your question? Say, join the club. And so anybody in the healthcare profession, if you want to go to that, it's 30% off retail, $5 shipping. Turned this into a commercial, sorry. I'm just happy, but I've stayed in contact with lots of my colleagues over the years and a lot of veterans over the years. And, those are some of the people who really do some of the great things for our whole country. So I want to make sure we pay back that way.
Great. Well, it sounds exciting. I'm looking forward to trying some of that wine. Jim, thank you so much for taking time with us today. So many great little tidbits of advice for our students there. Really appreciate it. Glad you could share your experience with us.
Well, it's been an honor. It only took me almost 40 years for me to get back to pharmacy school. But I will say this, thank you for what you and your whole staff are doing there. You and the staff are doing there, Dean, because you really are doing generational things. It's not just the students who are graduating today. Mm-hmm. You've laid a foundation so 40 years ago, the people who were there before you laid down a foundation with a bunch of young kids in pharmacy school who helped, who made careers, made lives, had families, made a difference. And that's what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
And what you're getting those students ready for the future, it's a much more complicated future, much more responsible future. But man, is that going to be a more impactful future. So things are bright. It's an exciting time. And over the next, literally the next 10 years, we've been saying this, next 10 years, next 10 years, next 10 years for 40 years. These next 10 years, just the last 5 years, what's going to happen in the next 10 in all of medicine here in the country, and that'll spread to a lot of the rest of the world. Amazing. And that's what you and your whole team are doing. So congratulations on getting a great team.
Yeah, thanks. Yep, we try. So thanks again, Jim, and take care.
Thank you. Appreciate it.